Good morning, everyone. Since I've been working on this commission and he just so happens to be wearing a lot of armor, today we're going to learn how to ink and color metal. First things first, start off with your nice clean line art. I keep it rather basic and I don't really add too many details at this stage. Once we have our line art done, next is to get references. References are extremely important, so use them. Instead of applying flat colors, the very first thing I actually do is apply shadows. And the reason why I start with shadows first is because it's probably the most important step as well as the longest. And at this point, I'm not actually focused on keeping these nice and neat. You primarily just want to kind of slap them down and get the general idea of where you want your shadows to be. Whenever you're blocking in these shadows, make sure you're still aware of your light source though. Next, we're going to start shaping these shadows and cleaning them up. Whenever you're doing this process, you want to make sure that you're keeping the curve of the metal in mind. You always want to make sure that you're going with the natural curve of the metal, not against it. And right now all I'm doing is I'm taking my eraser and I'm kind of pushing the shadows to where I want them to be. I like to describe this more as sculpting. To give the shadows more dimension, next we're going to take our smudge tool and we're going to slightly smudge out these edges. I don't smudge out the entire thing. We still want to have a nice dark crisp line in there. And this is a messy process, so make sure you're going in and you're erasing any stray shadows. What I like to do is I like to make sure there's also kind of like a lip to the metal since metal is not flat. And to make sure that the viewer can understand where one piece of metal ends and one begins, I'll go in and I'll erase a very thin, faint line on the edges of some of this metal. By doing this, it gives it a nice, clean, crisp edge. Metal is really reflective, so next we're going to add in these bounce light effects. And the way I do that is I get my eraser, set it to the same pen I used to ink, and I set it to a really big size. I'll then go in and I'll very lightly erase these areas where the metal's going to curve the most. I'll then get my little smudge tool here, and using soft circular motions, I'll start to blend this in to help it look a little bit less choppy. I primarily use this method in areas where the shadows are the heaviest. And the reason why I do this is to help make sure that it doesn't look flat and to give it a lot more dimension and shape. Understanding where to put your darkest shadows and where to put your reflective lighting is very vital to making metal look believable. It's really important to understand that you're not just putting these shadows in random spots. Whenever you're inking or coloring metal, you need to have a basic understanding of how highlights and shadows work. Now that we finally have all the shadows done, we're going to add our base color. Of course, pick whatever color you like, and you could say this is technically done. Y'all know I love color, so we're going to recolor all these shadows now. Recoloring these shadows, it's going to really help the other colors pop too. To help give the metal even more dimension, we're going to use a big soft airbrush and we're going to go in and we're going to start adding in these gradients. And just like with the shadows, we're not going to be doing this randomly. Instead, we're going to make sure to do it in areas to emphasize the curves of the metal. Next, we're going to add our highlights. Unless the metal is silver, avoid using white since it can really suck depth away from the drawing. Add your finishing touches and make some color adjustments and you're finished. I hope this helps and happy arting.